Good afternoon and welcome to the Midday News. Here's what we have in the bulletin. Commuters left stranded as JUTC drivers strike over issues with wage increase. Calls for government to increase income tax threshold. And later in sports, day 3 of ISA Boys and Girls Champs gets underway. Thank you for joining us. I'm Shamela Pullen. Here are the details. Commuters around the corporate area and in sections of St. Catherine were left stranded this morning as bus drivers of the Jamaica Urban Transit Company JUTC withdrew their service. As Sandy Williams reports, the drivers' protest action was evident at transportation hubs in downtown Kingston and Half-a-Tree, St. Andrew.
A new mode of transportation in downtown Kingston after commuters were left stranded because of strike action by Jamaica Urban Transit Company JUTC workers. It's understood that the drivers are not happy with the recent wage increase. Their protest is causing trouble for some commuters in downtown Kingston and Half-a-Tree as the JUTC is their main mode of transportation.
We are suffering. In a Jamaican language, we are suffering. And it's for a very long time, and I don't know when it's going to be over. I have to pay $500 for a court to come here. I come here, so I have to pay next year again to ready for it. It's bad.
I'm telling you, an instruction and
the bigger heads them take on the whole of the money. So the bus them can't repair and can't better. And you know, could have buy some cheaper bus. You could have value more and stay longer. Like the cost of them. You buy a bus at 40 million, but you could buy a 7 coaster. That will work out better and can repair the coaster.
And one commuter says even when there is no strike, getting a reliable JUTC bus has always been a problem.
They are saying that bus strike, but we don't have any bus. Sometimes one bus for the whole day.
Downtown Kingston.
We need help.
Meanwhile, the first vice president of the University and Allied Workers Union, Clifton Grant, says the workers are waiting to speak with the management to make a decision before going forward.
I think one factor that is affecting the whole process, that the company gave the workers 100,000 advance in December. And they went in and took out the 100,000 one time out the workers' pays. Some workers end up owing the company. We have said to them before they implement that do not take back the 100,000 one time. Let us work out a payment plan. But they went and did their own thing, and it end up now that the workers are totally dissatisfied and they can't function if they are not satisfied that the company care about their welfare.
Sandy Williams, TVJ News.
Meanwhile, in Spanish Town, St. Catherine, transport operators have illegally increased their fares, forcing commuters to pay as much as double the usual cost. They decided to impose the fare hike following the strike action by drivers at the state-run bus company JUTC.
That $300 they them matter about in the morning. I mean, I know about that. I know, but I know we have to reach up. That $300, well, might be if I car number, but I not give customer and I get my $300 right.
The government is being called on to increase the income tax threshold. This after the increase in public sector wages under the Compensation Review Program, which the majority of the island's unions have now signed on to. But why now? O'Shane Masters reports.
Giving with one hand, but taking back with the next. That's how the Jamaica Confederation of Trade Unions, JCTU, is looking at the recent wage agreement between the government and public sector workers. This as the income tax threshold in the country since 2017 has been at $1.5 million. Now, with the increase in wages, majority of public sector workers are over that threshold. It's why President of the JCTU, Helene Davis White, is calling for the threshold to be increased to at least $2 million.
We would not want what happened in 2016 to happen here. when the government moved it one shot to 1.5 million, and we ended up with a tax package of just about close to $30 billion. So we don't want that to be repeated, but we believe that, if the government looks at it, they should be able to put in place a kind of plan that allows for increases over time.
But what's the time frame for the JCTU boss?
We believe that it can be done over a 3-year period, and we may not necessarily be looking at it in this budget cycle. But as we say, if the government plans ahead, they should be able to put in place, policies that will ensure that what they lose as a result, they can make up back through some other means.
As to why public sector workers receiving more pay should trigger a threshold increase, Mrs. Davis-White says with the rate of inflation in the country, it would be an ideal move, not only for the public sector, but for those in the private sector as well.
We believe that, the value of that 1.5 million has been eroded. And so for that reason as well, we believe that an increase in the threshold across the board may be something that, will assist workers wherever they are to be able to deal with some of the difficulties that they are now facing.
O'Shane Masters, TVJ News.
The Jamaica Constabulary Force has issued a warning to persons attending the Issa Grace Kennedy Boys and Girls Athletics Championships. Head of the Corporate Communications Unit of the JCF, Senior Superintendent Stephanie Lindsay, says licensed firearm holders should make arrangements to secure their weapons if they plan to attend the events. SSP Lindsay says there are no provisions to secure firearms at the Stadium Police Station or the National Stadium.
No provision, because the station just is not equipped to deal with that. And when you think of the number of licensed firearm holders that would want to access the stadium, they just don't have the capability and the resources to do it. So there's no provision at the Stadium Police Station to facilitate the keeping of guns.
SSP Lindsay adds that it is neither safe nor in their best interest for people to leave their firearm in their vehicles when attending the championships.
We understand people are kind of, skeptical. You get attached to your weapon. You just don't want to be out there without it. So I would say to those individuals that the fact that it is being televised, it is better to stay home and get a group of friends somewhere and watch the match. If you think you have to keep your gun, than to really put your firearm in a vehicle and leave it to go into the stadium, because you really don't know if your vehicle is going to be one of those that the criminals will target and may just get lucky. So we don't want to have another firearm out there in the hands of criminal that is going to come back to be a menace to society. So we really want persons to be very, very responsible and not to do that. We understand the concerns that people have, but many events are held right across the country. We don't carry our firearms and we are very safe.
She was speaking earlier this week on Radio Jamaica's Balancing Justice. It's now time for a break. Stay with us. More stories when we return. Welcome back to the Midday News. More measures are being implemented at the Criminal Records Office of the Jamaica Constabulary Force, JCF, to enhance service delivery and customer experience. Police Commissioner Major General Anthony Anderson says the JCF is aware of the challenges the public faces, and so they're working to fix them.
A number of persons who try to utilize the services of the Criminal Records Office have complained about the hassle they face trying to get their request processed. But Police Commissioner Major General Anthony Anderson says a further upgrade at the office is far advanced, and so very soon persons should find the process easier.
By the time we finish this process, it will allow us and allow the customer far more convenience to get things done. It will allow us better data. As you say, we were, as you know, or may know, that we are looking at, there are some changes to the Fingerprint Act to deal with electronic capture and use of electronic fingerprint, particularly in the courts, and so on.
With all the changes being done, General Anderson revealed that a multi-biometric identity act is now being considered.
What we have is a multi-biometric information system. So, what it means, there are people who don't have fingerprints, but they still need to be identified. So, can we use facial recognition? Can we use iris scan? These are technologies that are out there, and these are technologies that we have already. It's just that without the legislative support to those technologies, really, they just happen. You see what I mean? They're not leveraging it.
Meanwhile, the police commissioner says, as it relates to the discussion around police body cameras, an improvement will be seen soon with that rollout. He says so far, 400 are in service with more to come in coming weeks.
It's a whole different proposition. So what we had to do first is create the base. So what the base was are servers, computer servers that have the capacity to store that sort of information and recover it when required for evidential purposes and so on, with all the safeguards around it to ensure that data is not tampered with or impacted. That's a different proposition than just hanging a few cameras on people. So they had to do this, that's in place.
Raquel Porto, TVJ News.
Residents in Portland are intensifying their appeal for the authorities to address an ongoing fire at the Doctors Wood dump site in the parish. But the National Solid Waste Management Authority, NSWMA, which owns the site, says the situation is almost under control. A blanket of smoke covers the Windsor Castle and Hart Hill communities in Portland. Residents complain that they have been experiencing the smoke for days now, with each day getting worse.
It's terrible. It's terrible. It's terrible. It's terrible. If you go into the houses right now, everybody clothes, everything just smell like the garbage.
From yesterday evening to this morning, and so it a one till we all fire down here. If you even can look over the bush, still see smoke. It's bad because some people feel lock up in them house. Some people pass some money, may not come.
They say it is coming from the Doctors Wood dump site in Buff Bay, Portland, which is some 5 minutes away. They are also concerned about their health, as some persons suffer from respiratory issues.
We have a lot of people in the area with asthma, sinus. Myself, I have sinusitis, serious sinusitis. And right now, I'm in trouble. Right now.
Even though we have a house, better take asthma pump, because we can hardly breathe. In here, still foggy with the smoke and everything. This makes no sense. This is crazy. We need help around here with the smoke with the dump.
And it's not the first time this is happening.
This thing was promised to us that would be a temporary dump. And now we realize that it becomes a permanent dump. And I can tell you that what I have known as a fact, that at one point we were getting dumped from as far as St. Anne's, and we were getting dumped as far as from St. Thomas.
They say they have reached out to the various authorities to intervene, but nothing has happened. They're making another appeal before the situation gets worse.
The last time it burned, I know how they did to out it, but I am not sure right now if they even know how to put it out, because they had to dig some hole and push it over and then cover it.
Meanwhile, TVJ News contacted the National Solid Waste Management Authority, which operates the site. The executive director, Ode Gordon, says he is aware of the problem and they're making progress in getting it under control. He's now time for the Business Minute.
The World Trade Organization, WTO, says the Trade Facilitation Agreement, TFA, has facilitated a $231 billion increase in trade. A study conducted by the organization found that trade in agricultural goods saw the largest increase. Based on estimates for the years 2017 to 2019, WTO economists attribute an average 5% increase in global agricultural trade to the TFA. They have tracked 1.5% growth in manufacturing trade and just over 1% in overall trade linked to the Trade Facilitation Agreement. Now, the WTO says the increases were largely driven by the trade growth in less developed countries, where agricultural exports rose by 17%, manufacturing exports by 3.1%, and the total exports improved by 2.4% under the TFA. The U.S. Commerce Department says the gross domestic product grew slightly less than expected in the fourth quarter of last year. It says the inflation-adjusted GDP, which is the broadest measure of economic activity, was 2.6%. That's a tenth over a point shy of a recent estimate, according to Refinitiv. Meanwhile, the Department of Labor reports first-time job loss claims have increased. It says 198,000 people applied for the benefits last week. That's above economists' expectations and up 7,000 from the previous week's number. And that's it for the Business Minute. I'm Shane Masters.
It's now time for the top regional and international stories.
Dominica's Prime Minister, Roosevelt Skerrit, has called for the development of strategies and interventions to assist small island developing states, SIDS, to mitigate the impacts of climate change. Speaking on Wednesday, Mr. Skerrit noted that the extreme vulnerability of SIDS to climate change impacts and external shocks continue to set back the pace of their development, noting the need to prioritize key areas of development and to take more decisive action to bring meaningful change. He told the meeting that an examination of the SIDS debt profile would show that 98% of their borrowing was to respond to natural disasters and external shocks. He believes had it not been for these natural disasters and external shocks, the debt to GDP ratio of SIDS would be below 40%. Mr. Skerrit says no longer can lip service be given to the issues of climate change, as it's now time for the restrictive access to development financing be lifted. Russia has arrested a Wall Street Journal journalist on suspicion of espionage. Russia's Federal Security Service says the reporter was spying for the American government. They say the U.S. citizen was detained while trying to obtain secret information about one of the Russian military-industrial complexes. According to the Wall Street Journal website, the journalist covers Russia, Ukraine, and the former Soviet Union. He previously worked for the Moscow Times and the New York Times. In a statement, the Wall Street Journal says it vehemently denies Moscow's allegations of espionage. Hal Shaneberg reporting for TVJ News.
We head to a quick break. When we come back, we'll have your midday sports report with Giovanni Dennis.